everyone, and welcome to another episode of Faerie, Fable, Librarians. I'm Simona.
And I'm Katie.
And before we begin discussing what this episode will be on, we just wanted to thank everyone for the positive feedback that we received on our Vox Machina episode and the number of views.
We really appreciate it. Quite honestly, when we decided to do that video, I honestly didn't think we were going to get as much of a great reception for it than we did. And we really appreciate you and appreciate the fact that you liked the review we did and the content. So, we're over the moon.
Yes, so thank you guys so much.
Yes.
And we hope that you'll give this episode just as much love. So Katie and I are going to be discussing Star Wars Episode 4, 5, and 6.
The original trilogy.
And we're going to be analyzing it through the lens of Joseph Campbell's monomyth theory, just as we did with the Vox Machina episode.
And really why we're doing this episode is because not only is Star Wars an amazing franchise, and there's so many stories that have come out of the movies, whether it was the original trilogy, the prequel series, which growing up in that time was I consider to be my original trilogy growing up, the sequels. We also have like The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. And last Friday, the 27th, we had the Obi-Wan Kenobi episode, like the first and second episodes come out on Friday, and they're amazing. They're amazing. So we'll touch on that towards the end, but that was released on Friday. We also had the Star Wars celebration all last week. You can also view that streaming on YouTube and the new Kenobi series on Disney+.
Yeah, so there's a lot of great content coming out with the Star Wars universe, which also goes to prove its staying power, its universality in terms of its themes and its messages. And also, it's a big credit to the fan base itself. And I'm sorry, my glasses are fogging up as I'm talking, but
it's okay, Simona. You can say you're excited.
So there's a lot of great content, and as you may notice, we also have some books. We have some gorgeous books about the costumes of Star Wars, and we also have a book that talks about concept illustrations. So if you ever find yourself in the library, please check these books out. They're gorgeous. And we also have some great fiction books based on the Star Wars stories. We even have Star Wars, like Shakespeare books, which are really cool. So come to the library and check those out.
Please.
So in analyzing the monomyth theory, and I have it written down. So the first part of the Campbell monomyth theory is birth. So when he refers to birth, it's a fabulous circumstance surrounding the conception, birth, and childhood of the hero, and it establishes the hero's pedigree. So if we're talking about Luke has pretty awesome pedigree.
Yeah, being the son of Padme Amidala, who we all know was like one of the youngest queens for Naboo, and then a senator for the Republic, and also the son of Anakin Skywalker, who was a prominent Jedi during the Clone Wars and the rise of the Empire, where he turns into Darth Vader.
Yeah, so when we first meet Luke in Episode 4 of the Star Wars franchise, so it's the very first film, he is living a very humble existence with his aunt and his uncle, and they farm on this desert planet called Tatooine.
It's a moisture farm, so that's how that works.
Yeah, so not like they're not farming vegetables. So, and it's not too far into the first film, but Luke eventually learns that he's not of humble origin.
Nope.
There is some spectacular circumstances surrounding his conception.
Yes.
So while he's not divine in origin, he still fits sort of the standard birth story for the hero. He fits certain characteristics that are needed.
Like any Jedi,
Mm-hmm.
he is born with a sensitivity to the Force.
Mm-hmm.
And had the Jedi survived, or had the Empire not been, had the Empire not risen after Episode 3, Revenge of the
Mm-hmm.
Sith, he and Leia would have most likely have gone to the temple to be
Mm-hmm.
trained as a Jedi.
Yeah, so very true. And then eventually the next stage is the call to adventure stage. And this happens when Luke is sort of approached by Obi-Wan Kenobi, whom he affectionately refers to as Old Ben, because at that point in the story, Luke is not even aware of Obi-Wan Kenobi's true origins, that he is a Jedi. He's just this old man that he knows.
I believe
Yeah.
he's described as being a hermit
Yeah.
by Owen,
Mm-hmm.
his uncle.
Yeah, so it's Obi-Wan who's this legendary Jedi Master, and he functions as what Joseph Campbell refers to as the messenger. So the messenger can have divine origins. It could be an old man. So if you think about going back to the Lord of the Rings, Gandalf figures as the messenger figure when, like in The Hobbit, when he approaches Bilbo and spurs him onto this quest, or with the Hobbit Frodo. So he's like another messenger figure. And he basically is the one that lights the spark of adventure for Luke. I mean, Luke, when we first see him, he's not too happy
Yeah.
being on Tatooine. It's sort of like the back end or so of the galaxy that no one really wants to be on it. So to
It's,
speak.
I mean, it's in the Outer Rim. It was once, or it still kind of is. It's ruled by Jabba the Hutt, who is a gangster, not really a lawful character.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of seediness in the prequel series. There was slavery
Mm-hmm.
on the planet of Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I don't want to call it like the seedy underbelly of the galaxy, but it's certainly not a place where one would go to have a good life.
Yeah, and it's not a place that encourages dreams or aspirations of any kind. Really.
No, but it's good though too, because at least it kept Luke safe and out of the hands of the Empire.
Exactly.
and away from Darth Vader.
Which is eventually, you kind of find out later on why Luke was even brought to that planet. And Obi-Wan essentially enters into an exile, first for the practical reason where the Jedi are being hunted down and exterminated. So in order to be able to fulfill the function of watching Luke, he has to go undercover, sort of forego the ways of the Jedi in order to blend in, watch over Luke. So as cases, there is a practical reason for Luke being on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And Luke has aspirations of being a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
So he has sort of that spark, that desire for something more. I think a part of him realizes, though I don't think he's aware of it at the time, that he's meant for something more than just being a farmer.
Yeah.
So it's through Obi-Wan. And it's actually really through, at one point, when the Empire gets wind of the fact that Luke is on the planet, and Luke sort of inadvertently gets involved with this resistance message that's been snuck into
R2D2
by Princess Leia when she's on her spaceship that gets intercepted by Darth Vader. She's sent a secret message out, and Luke sort of inadvertently becomes involved in that, and because he becomes involved in that, he becomes a target. His aunt and uncle are killed.
Sadly.
And this is what sort of lights the fire for him to say, okay, I need to sort of get out of here. And Obi-Wan and Luke seek out Han Solo, who has a ship.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's not that they seek him out personally. They're just trying to get off planet.
They're trying to find someone that's willing them to, like, take them off the planet, and Han Solo fits the bill. I mean, and also Han Solo is sort of on the run from Jabba the Hutt because he has debts or something that he hasn't fulfilled.
So he's not on the run from Jabba at first.
Oh, okay.
Because Jabba comes to the Millennium Falcon after meeting with Obi-Wan and Luke.
Mm-hmm.
And Han essentially says, like, I dropped the shipment of spice because I was getting boarded by Imperials, and if I had kept it, then I would have been arrested, or however galactic justice is dealt out. We don't really know. That's not really elaborated on. But the reason why he's in trouble with Jabba is because he had thrown out a whole shipment of spice that would have earned Jabba a lot of credits.
Now, is this spice like spice, as in like seasoning your food spice, or it's like the Doom like spice?
The illegal spice.
Okay, so it's like
it's not to flavor your food.
It's like drugs. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's drugs. Okay.
Yes.
So he disposes of the drugs, which makes sense because if you're like in your car and the police come, you chuck the drugs out of the car.
Well, I mean, I hope you would hide it a little better.
And then you deal with the person you're supposed to delivering the drugs to. So that's essentially, Han Solo decides to take them. And that's when we sort of fall into, like, Waller. In the course of this adventure, every hero has his or her helpers. So these helpers come in various forms. They could provide muscle. They could provide magic. They could provide wisdom. So the helpers, exactly. So Princess Leia Organa, I consider her one of the helpers. I mean, she plays a major role.
Oh, she's definitely not like the damsel in distress. She's definitely like that strong, empowered female character. Mm-hmm. But she brings the intelligence to the party, whereas I think Han brings more of like the muscle.
Exactly. And I think I remember hearing that there were some people, the ones who sort of criticized the Star Wars franchise for not having enough women in the franchise or proactive female characters. And I don't know if Princess Leia has been labeled as lacking or not being proactive, which I find really strange because she's a very active character.
Yeah, I mean, I think
in this series she leads the resistance movement. I don't know how much more active you could really get.
Right, exactly. And I think a perfect example of being proactive is when they go to rescue her out of the detention bay in the Death Star. And they're getting shot at by stormtroopers, and she grabs she grabs Luke's blaster and blasts like the garbage chute, and then jumps away from the wall, fires at the stormtroopers, gets to the hole she created, and tells Han, into the garbage chute, fly boy, and then tosses the blaster back to Luke. So, and she's the first one into the garbage chute. So, I mean, that if that's not a proactive female character, I don't know what is.
I know, and she also, in many ways, while she is the helper, she also goes through her own, I guess, hero's journey. At least in my opinion, she definitely does.
Oh, yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I think her hero's journey doesn't necessarily start with, they don't start at the same time. Yes. Leia's journey story obviously has started well before Luke's hero's journey.
Because she's also on a different planet. She, and I can't remember her.
Alderaan.
So she's part of the royal family there. So she and Luke, obviously for their safety, they were separated at birth and sent to different planets, different families. So they've had very different upbringings.
Yeah.
And Leia is very much aware of the politics of the Empire. She's aware of the people that she has to mingle with and deal with.
Yeah.
So she's coming already into this with a lot of knowledge. And like I said, she is secretly part of the resistance. Well, Darth Vader and the kind of know that she's part, or at least suspect that she's part of the resistance. But she's very much involved.
I would say that they know, being as when Darth Vader and Leia's first scene together is like her denying that she is part of the Rebel Alliance and is on a diplomatic mission from Alderaan, and Darth Vader goes, "You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away."
Yes.
So.
And she gets interrogated.
Yes.
She withstands that interrogation because she's strong.
Absolutely. Yes.
So then Katie mentioned another of the helpers, Han Solo, and he brings in the muscle, the firepower, the, spaceship power.
The suave.
Exactly. And he, and he also is able to, because like I said, Luke being as sheltered as he has been, someone like Han Solo, who has been involved with a particular segment of the galactic population.
Yeah.
He has that ability to, and he has that awareness of how things like Leia can handle the political governmental. Han can sort of navigate the seedier, shadier underbelly of the
Like the criminal organization
exactly.
of the galaxy or the Galactic Empire.
Exactly. And Han's character, he also goes through a tremendous emotional growth as well.
Yes, even though he's still suave and arrogant in the
Yes.
second movie.
But that's what we love about him.
It is what we love about him.
Because he very much initially agrees to this because he's getting paid. Which makes sense because he needs income. He needs to be able to fuel his plane, get parts.
I mean, it's mostly that the amount of credits that he's getting from Luke and Obi-Wan Kenobi is like the amount he would have had with the spice shipment with Jabba. So it's saving his neck.
Yeah.
His ship, the Millennium Falcon, because they're not planes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ship.
Spaceship. Ships.
Spaceships.
Yeah.
They're not planes. They're spaceships.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The Millennium Falcon. He kind of like just patches together. I mean, he doesn't really need the money for the Millennium Falcon. He needs it more to save his neck from Jabba.
But he definitely loves the Millennium Falcon.
Oh,
the way
yeah.
he cares for the ship, and I like the way he talks to the ship.
Yep.
There's a relationship, which makes sense.
It's his child.
Home. It's his also way of getting from one place to another.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we can't talk about the helpers without Chewbacca.
No, you can't.
Who's a warrior in his own right, who's Han's solo co-pilot, his best friend, and Chewbacca also joins the Resistance, so he adds another element.
But also, again, not until like the second movie, or episode 5 of the original trilogy. And I do want to say that Chewbacca is a Wookiee from the planet Kashyyyk, who was also involved in the Clone Wars in the prequel trilogy, and it's also a really great animated series as well, the Clone Wars.
So. And the good thing about with a lot of these characters, while we are discussing the first 4, 5, and 6, the original trilogy, these characters have stories that go beyond the original trilogy. And as Katie said, these stories live on in books, in comics, in cartoons, in video games. So the story goes beyond the scope of what we're going to be just like these first 3 films. And I would say that even Luke's hero journey doesn't end with the 6th film. There's the Mandalorian series where Luke is in there and he's still very much active. He's still a Jedi. He hasn't yet become the sort of embittered person that he is in the later films.
The Last Jedi. Yeah,
when he eventually begins to train Rey, but we'll talk about that later. That's like in the latter part of the heroes.
Right.
Another helper, which is a very interesting character, and I would say he is a favorite of the fandom, is Lando Clarissian.
Yeah.
And he comes in episode 6?
Episode 5.
5, okay.
It's when Han, Leia, and Chewbacca are running away from the Empire, and they land there. The Millennium Falcon is in dire need of repair for whatever reason. We don't really know that reason. We just know, like, by the beginning of this movie of The Empire Strikes Back, the Falcon is in dire need of repair, and going through an asteroid field to try and get away from the Galactic Empire was probably not the best decision.
But I love that. You know what part I really like, though? When they think they've gone into an asteroid and they're just chilling there.
Oh, yeah, and it's a space worm.
Yeah, and Leia's like, there's like movement. So like they go outside to figure out what it is, and they're stepping, and it's like, these things are squishy. And then like Han gets them where he goes, we're not in an asteroid. Yeah. And they've actually ended up in a worm, which is terrifying to consider had they remained longer, what could have happened.
Yeah.
And there's that terrifying sequence where you see the mouth about to close and they finally just shoot right out of it.
Yeah.
But that was one of the fun moments where it's like Han realizes we're not in an asteroid.
Yeah. No.
Like, well, what are you in?
Yeah. So they go to Cloud City, which is the planet in which Lando Calrissian is like the protector of, or he's the leader of this planet. We don't know what his title is. We just know that he is the person that someone would go to for help, or for the political part of Cloud City. And I mean, their friendship or lack of friendship goes way, way back. So they have they have an established friendship when they meet again, and of course the Millennium Falcon is in dire need of repair, and they go to Cloud City for help, for safety, for just to hide out. Of course, we all know what happens.
Yes. So Lando starts off where you're not sure if you should trust him 100%.
Yeah.
He has this very charming, disarming smile. So there's a little bit of iffiness to his character to begin with. And then eventually you realize that Darth Vader has landed. He has stormtroopers, and Lando Clarissian basically betrays Leia, Han, and Chewbacca. But in a way, understandably so, because Darth Vader has threatened the lives of the people that he's trying to protect.
Yeah.
So while, it's obviously on the side of the good, we'll say, oh, you betrayed us. But at the same time, it's if I don't do this, all of these lives.
Right. It's like he had to weigh his, albeit rocky, relationship with Han over the lives of the people that have come to depend on him. Exactly. And he chose the people that have come to depend on him.
But he does redeem himself.
He does.
In that film, because he saves Luke, and Luke is I forgot how he eventually ends up in that shoot where he's basically dangling.
Oh, it's after he loses his hand, after he spoiler alert. I hope that most people already know, this big reveal, spoiler, just in case.
Yeah.
That he finds out that Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker and is his father. And he, instead of taking his hand and joining him on the dark side, he falls off of where he had climbed onto, and the fall brings him to that chute and through. And
Clarissian basically saves him, so he kind of redeems himself. He does do a good turn.
Yeah.
But going back, so and some parts of the monomyth theory kind of blend, at least in my opinion, they blend into one another. So there's the crossing of the threshold, and that is essentially, let me see what Campbell actually says about this, just to give you, for those who may not know what that actually means. So basically, upon reaching the threshold of adventure, the hero must undergo some sort of ordeal in order to pass from the everyday world into the world of adventure. The trial may be as painless as entering a dark cave, or as violent as being swallowed up by a whale. The important feature is the contrast between the familiar world of light and dark and the unknown world of adventure. So I kind of thought of it as when Luke begins his training to become a Jedi Master, so he seeks out this figure known as Yoda, who when he first lands on this planet, you don't know who Yoda is. You haven't met him yet.
No.
Luke just knows he's extremely important. I need to find him. I need him to train me. So Luke meets Yoda, but at this point, Yoda hasn't introduced himself as Yoda. He kind of comes across as a little crazy.
Well, he's been a hermit for the last 20 years.
Understandably so, but so he shows up after Luke has crashed his plane, and he can't figure out, not his plane, I keep on saying plane, ship. He's crashed his ship.
X-Wing.
He's crashed his ship. He doesn't really know how to fix it. He's a little bummed. This weird dude shows up and says, "Come into my house, I'll make you dinner."
Well, essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So so we're on the planet Dagobah, and he's Luke has set up camp by this lake, where he crash landed, and he's eating, and suddenly Yoda pops up, and Yoda, being Yoda, of course, goes, "Yoda, you seek Yoda," and Luke goes, "You know Yoda?" And Yoda's like, although we don't know that it's Yoda yet, goes, "Of course I do. Come, follow me," you know? And once they're at Yoda's hut, you hear the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi's Force Ghost. And it's when it's all revealed. And we are introduced to Yoda, who's trained Jedi for 800 years, which is a very long time. And, you know, he is the master you want to have training from.
Yeah, and Luke, of course, because an aspect of his personality is impatience, and that's one of the aspect of his personality that he has to learn to master. His basically belief that this should be happening quickly. He essentially tells Yoda, I just want to learn how to use the lightsaber. I don't want to learn theory. I don't want to learn all this hypothetical stuff. And Yoda, of course, has to say, this is just as important as wielding the lightsaber. And the lightsaber is not just some tool. It's an extension of you as an individual.
Right.
And it's something that should be respected because it has a lot of history and weight.
Right. I think what a classic example is that when Luke's X-Wing starts to sink into the lake he had crash landed on, he tries to lift the X-Wing out of the water using the Force. Of course, he can't, and tells Yoda that it's too heavy. Yoda, this squat, old, hunched over alien being, because he's not a human, an alien being, lifts the X-Wing using the Force and moves it over onto land. And after Luke inspects his ship and whatnot, he turns to Yoda and goes, I can't believe it. And Yoda answers, and that's why you fail. Because you don't believe in the Force, is essentially what he's saying.
Another aspect, if you want to talk about a film, like if you've ever seen The Matrix, the original, there's 3 or 4 films in the Matrix.
Don't look at me.
I want to say there's 3. Part of me kind of thinks there's 4, but in the very first film, after Neo has been taken out of the Matrix by Morpheus, there's a scene where Morpheus and Neo are training in this virtual generated world. And the reason why I bring it up is because it's similar to what Katie has just discussed with Luke trying to raise his
ship.
I was going to say plane again. Ship. And Morpheus and Neo are fighting. And at one point, Morpheus deals like this tremendous blow to like Neo's stomach, and Neo crashes. And Morpheus says, how did I beat you? And Neo says, you're too fast. And Morpheus says, do you think that my speed has anything to do with my ability within this world? Because it's a virtually generated world.
Right.
What you see of Morpheus and Neo are projections of their mind. So body mass, physics have no place within this. It's basically because Morpheus believes he has that power and ability, he's able to do it.
Right.
At this point, Neo hasn't sort of overcome the concept that there are no physical limitations within this generated world. The only limitations are mental.
Yep.
Once Neo overcomes that, then he becomes the person that we grow to know in that film series, and he becomes the one. And if you're thinking about the monomyth theory, Neo's journey fits that as well. He is the hero. He has his helpers. One could argue he gets divine assistance, but it follows that journey very well as well. It's a good example.
Yeah.
So in Crossing the Threshold, there's this part where Luke has to go into the Forest of Dagobah. And while he's there's a cave within the Forest of Dagobah that he has to go into. And while he's in the cave, he sort of has to confront the image of Darth Vader, or like a manifestation of Darth Vader.
I don't know that he necessarily has to. Yoda essentially tells him, that's where the dark side resides.
Yeah.
And Luke can, now that he's in his training, we don't know how many days he's been training with Yoda, but I'm suspecting it's been a good amount.
Well, you can
of,
also see, like, I noticed even the physical transformation in
Yeah.
Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
he develops. So I'm assuming
Broader.
it's probably like a few months, maybe.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah,
you don't get that
we don't-
conception
right.
really of how much time has passed.
Needless to say, he senses the Force a lot easier. He's more attuned to it, so of course he's gonna sense the pull of the dark side.
Yeah.
And that's what Yoda tells him. Yoda's like, that is the dark side, and Luke goes, what's in there? And Yoda, I can't remember if he explicitly tells Luke what's in there, but that it's just where the dark side resides.
I feel like he'd be a bit ambiguous. Like,
Yeah,
the way Yoda is, like,
yeah.
he'll tell you but not tell you.
Right.
Which I guess is the point. It's sort of like, I think it's sort of when you're undergoing any kind of test, you can be kind of vague because
Yeah.
you want the person, I guess he wants Luke to be as unprepared as possible in order to adequately
Right.
face what he needs to face.
I feel, yeah, and like especially when Luke grabs his utility belt
Yeah.
with his weapons,
Yeah.
and Yoda says, "You're not going to need your weapons," and Luke enters the cave, and he's suddenly confronted by Darth Vader, but it's not really Darth Vader, and a fight ensues, and Luke decapitates this image of Darth Vader, and when the helmet faces Luke, the face of the helmet gets blown off, and Luke sees his own face in Darth Vader's helmet. And it's essentially telling Luke that if he falls to the dark side, he's going to end up exactly like Darth Vader.
And it could also be almost that everyone has light and dark.
Well, absolutely.
Few people
Yeah.
are just mostly light or mostly dark. And it also reminds me of another excellent example of the hero journey in Harry Potter. And there's a scene where Harry Potter's godfather, Sirius, is talking to Harry because Harry is expressing doubts about whether or not he truly is good or if he is just like Voldemort. And Sirius says, the world isn't divided into Death Eaters and non-Death Eaters. We all have light. We all have dark.
Mm-hmm.
So that could also be like where Luke has that potential. He could go either way.
Yeah.
Which is the same with Anakin. Anakin had the potential to be he sort of through various circumstances chose the dark side.
Right. Well, to save Padme and
Yeah.
his unborn child.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, because like at that point we hadn't realized that I mean, we knew that Luke and Leia was going to come out of this union, but of course the characters didn't realize that it was two children and not one.
Yeah.
But and just his own fears and sense of loss and abandonment that Anakin had gone through, it's quite honestly not surprising that he turned to the dark side.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, one could almost see it, and I think this also echoes, like, if you think about generational trauma or how the past can often repeat itself. If you go later in the films with Ben Solo, how Ben Solo was training under Luke. Luke kind of sort of jumped the gun, so to speak, in assuming that Ben was heading toward the dark side, and because he almost tries to kill Ben. I mean, he does have a change of heart, but Ben doesn't really see that. All he sees is that the man he trusts is standing over him with a lightsaber.
And who's his uncle?
Yeah.
He's Luke is Ben's uncle.
So that sense of betrayal, it mirrors Anakin. And even if you see, like, if our listeners are familiar with the later film series, even Ben Solo's costume is sort of a harkening back to Darth Vader's classic black suit.
Right.
And also Ben Solo's sort of desire to emulate his grandfather, try to live up to that reputation that Darth Vader had. And also, like, the hero goes through a series of tests. So Luke, throughout the first three films, goes through various tests. Some are, like, minor, like I put one, like Luke when they're in the trash dispenser. I don't know if that really counts as a test, but he has to overcome that hurdle because they almost get crushed to death.
Right. Thank you, C-3PO.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's that funny scene when they're celebrating and CP3O thinks that
C-3PO.
C-3PO, sorry. I'm just, I'll call the gold. the gold android. The etiquette android, and that's not because I'm gonna. That
Well,
would be a tongue twister.
he is technically an etiquette android, but it's C3PO.
C3PO. He saves the day, and
With R2D2's help.
Yes, and he hears them celebrate, and he thinks that they're dying, it's a funny scene.
It's hysterical.
Another test could be Jabba the Hutt, you know. 'Cause
Oh yeah, with the Bamfta monster when he's
yeah, and he essentially Luke faces imminent danger, imminent death multiple times throughout the 3 films, and of course in later series, and I'm sure even in the current like Mandalorian series, I'm sure he's still
he shows up again in the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
Training Grogu.
Yeah, so over the course of Luke's life, he's going to face multiple threats.
Yes.
So then, like, a major test, in my opinion, is also Luke being able to resist joining the dark side.
Oh, absolutely.
And there is this beautiful moment when Luke willingly surrenders himself to the Empire, to the Empire's forces. Because also Luke at this point has a better understanding of himself, has a better understanding of what the Force is, and also has basically this innate knowledge that he can overcome. Like, he's not the same boy that he was when he first started this journey.
Yeah.
And I think Darth Vader, to an extent, realizes that as well. And there's that nice conversation when he talks to Darth Vader, and eventually when Darth Vader also has his moment of redemption
when he tosses the Emperor off the
Exactly.
platform.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Yeah,
and
he like, you see his face for the first time.
And what I love so much is when Luke tells Anakin, because he is Anakin at this point, he has redeemed himself, so he's no longer Darth Vader, but he is Anakin Skywalker once again. And Luke tells him, you know, I'm not going to leave you. I have to save you. And Anakin says, you know, you already have, Luke. Tell your sister you already have.
Yeah, and that sort of goes into like what Joseph Campbell calls the climax or the final battle. And Luke, over the course of the original series, fights Darth Vader a few times. But it's in that final battle when, you know, Darth Vader, we're going to call him Anakin at that point, as you said, because he realizes that he needs to protect his son. He throws the Empire over, which is really satisfying. The Emperor, not the Empire, the Emperor. My words today, I'm so sorry. He throws the Emperor over, disposes of that guy. His face is revealed, which is also very important because I honestly think, and I'm sure this was intentional, because if they had kept his mask on, I don't believe it would have had the same effect.
No, it wouldn't have the same effect.
Because the mask is what sort of keeps this sort of illusion that you're dealing with this monster. When he removes the mask, you realize there's the human being underneath.
Right, exactly.
Which is also echoed in the first film with the franchise dealing with Rey Skywalker, when she's first being interrogated by Ben Solo, and she says basically, she says the line, because I think Ben says, I don't know if he says that she's nervous, and she says something along like, that's what happens when you're being hunted by a monster in a mask. And at that point, he removes the mask, and you see his face for the first time.
Right. Well, and I just want to point out, it's not Rey Skywalker. Another spoiler, she's Rey Palpatine. She's the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine, who is Darth Sidious, who is the Emperor.
I called her Skywalker because she gives her name for her. That's the name she chooses for her. That's why I refer to that, because at the end she says, "What is your name?" and she says Rey Skywalker.
That's at the very end.
Yeah, that's why I did it. I understand. Yeah, spoiler. She's the granddaughter of the Emperor, who's still alive, by the way. So spoilers if you haven't seen those films. So,
semantics, right?
Yes. So, as Katie's right, she's Palpatine because she's his granddaughter, but she's Skywalker because at the very end she smiles, and that's the reason why I did is because that's the name she chooses for herself. She basically says, "I'm Rey Skywalker," but yeah, she's Rey Palpatine because she's his granddaughter. Spoilers if you haven't seen it.
I'm pretty sure most of you have seen it, but just in case.
We're going to go with the assumption that if you're listening to this, you know this franchise, so, you know, but we'll say spoilers anyway.
Yes.
So there's that moment when Ben removes his mask and you see that he's a human, And you see that Rey is kind of taken aback because all she has seen up to this point is that really horrifying mask.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he also does it to disarm her because he's trying to get under her skin. He's trying to break her, and it's not really successful.
Right.
And a lot of the times you see that done a lot where, like, the villain will either take a mask off or they'll shift the way they talk to sort of disarm the person they're dealing with, to throw that person off, saying, you know, I'm really not such a bad guy or a bad girl or, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, Ben does the same thing. And also harking back to like past events and how history can repeat itself if nothing is done about it.
Yes.
And like I said, Luke is able to bring Anakin back. There's that moment of healing between father and son, where Anakin also sees Luke. I mean, he was aware that Luke is his son, but he saw Luke more as a tool to be used. At this point, he sees him truly as his son, as a human being, and they both achieve that closure, and Anakin, you know, passes away, but he has been redeemed.
He has. And what I love, like my favorite scene in Return of the Jedi, and I know it's really corny and really sappy, but when Luke comes to Endor and they're all like celebrating with the Ewoks, and everyone's celebrating, and Luke turns away from everybody to look out into like the tree houses, and he sees Obi-Wan's Force Ghost and Yoda's Force Ghost and then Anakin's Force Ghost. And it's, if you've seen the remastered DVDs, not the not when it was re-released on VHS, but on like the remastered DVDs, it's Hayden Christensen as Anakin, which I really like, because it's like it's Anakin. It's you know, he is back to who he always was supposed to be, and it's great. It's great.
Now, in the original, did they show like Anakin played by the actor, like when the mask was removed, or he just was never included?
No, he was there. I don't know if it was I believe it was the actor who was like the body actor of Darth Vader, because of course we all know that James Earl Jones was the voice actor of Darth Vader. But
no, and I like that too. I like that they put Hayden Christensen in that scene, and I don't think it's a corny scene. I think it's a beautiful scene because it's like all sort of the figures of importance, all the figures that helped him along in his journey and have been pivotal in his growth as a person are the ones he sees at the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a very nice moment. Like I liked that moment too. And to know that they're all at peace, and I think for them to know that they accomplished what they set out to accomplish. You know, Luke is this stable figure. He hasn't succumbed to the dark side the way his father had in the past, and he's sort of broken that cycle.
Yeah.
So, and another one, with the flight section, I put it when Luke and the rest of the Resistance destroys the Death Star, and they have that big celebration. Because with the flight, the hero has to go once more into the darkness, or once more into a situation which will require where he could potentially die, and he overcomes it. And Luke, and there is death, there is loss with some of the Resistance fighters, but in the end they achieve their goal as well. The Resistance destroys the Death Star. It's another blow to the Empire, and the Resistance is able to celebrate and sort of enjoy life once more. I mean, people were always enjoying life, but especially for the Resistance, that was very important. And so there's the final aspect is called the return, or like a boon. So it's when the hero has to return to mundane life, and he could receive a boon or he could bestow a boon. So what you learn towards the end of Luke's life, and I'm strictly going by the films. I'm not familiar with the books or the comics or the cartoons. So when I talk about Luke in his later life, I'm referring to the later films with Rey, when she goes to seek Luke out and to sort of receive her training. And I'm sorry, I need to take a sip of water. And Luke has almost become like Yoda, only just very bitter.
No, I wouldn't say that he's like Yoda. I would say that he's like Obi-Wan Kenobi, that hermit that has lost, his spirit. I mean, and I think this is like a really good way of bringing up like the new Obi-Wan Kenobi series that has started, that it came out last Friday. Where, Order 66 has happened. Most of the Jedi have been murdered by the clone troopers, and he is very much a broken man. He believes Anakin Skywalker is dead. And he just wants to be left alone and just wants to live his life in solitude and be away out of like I don't want to call it the spotlight, but like out of sight of the Inquisitors, the Galactic Empire, but all of the trauma that he had sustained during that conflict in the movie of Revenge of the Sith with Anakin and Order 66 has very much reared its head in the last 10 years when we see him in Tatooine watching over Luke. Because when Leia, spoilers, if you haven't seen this, please stop watching, but watch the series, the 2 episodes that have come out, because it's really, really good. Really good. Leia gets kidnapped from Alderaan, and Bail Organa and his wife reach out to Obi-Wan and ask, like, essentially beg Obi-Wan to save her, and he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. He, like, essentially says, like, my responsibility is to the boy, and then Bail Organa says, you also have a responsibility to his sister, and Obi-Wan says, I'm not that man anymore, and tells them, get somebody else. It's not until Bail Organa appears on Tatooine and tells Obi-Wan face to face, not in so many words, but essentially saying, it's not about the boy. You won't fail this time. And Obi-Wan says, well, what if I do? And it's just like this whole thing of like, well, you got to try. You can't just stay where you are. And I see that parallel with Luke Skywalker and Rey when Rey meets with Luke in The Last Jedi, that he's very much torn by trauma with Ben Solo before he essentially becomes Kylo Ren.
Yeah, so Luke at that point, when Rey has gone to find him, has become a hermit. He's sort of rejected his calling because he also believes that the Jedi Order almost should never have existed. He's also sort of struggling with his own guilt for attempting to murder his own nephew. So he has a lot of those emotions going on in his mind at that time. But he eventually does come to understand that the Jedi Order is needed, that it has its problems, but it also is very much needed as well. And he agrees to train Rey because he also realizes that if she's untrained, she could also potentially be manipulated and used for evil, and he doesn't want that to happen. Because also at this point, Ben Solo is still very much with the Emperor, so Luke wants to avoid Rey becoming another Ben.
Right.
She trains, so that's the sort of bestowing the boon, in my opinion, where he's bestowing his knowledge, bestowing his skills, and that helps Rey to develop as a character. And also, Luke does eventually come back to the Resistance. Like, I love that moment when he sees Princess Leia and he kisses her on the forehead, which, by the way, was not scripted.
I didn't know that.
Mark Hamill did that because he really got emotional, and he initiated that kiss. It was not scripted.
Aww.
Which makes it even sweeter. So he ends up going back to the Resistance.
Or he at least he force projects a younger version of himself to help the resistance.
Yeah, and I think that is, that's actually one of the final aspects.
Right, and I mean, this last act that Luke does essentially ends his hero's journey because he ultimately gives his life to save not only his sister but the resistance. So his hero's journey ends in that moment.
Yeah, and it also follows, like, if you, like, going back to a film that I mentioned earlier, if you look at the Matrix films, Neo has that final act where he sacrifices himself essentially for the people of Zion, and that almost doesn't end the war, but they sort of come to like a truce or an understanding, so to speak. So that could be Neo's boon or his gift to the people of Zion, where he sacrifices himself and brings that peace. Which in the other film that they came out with, which isn't as good as the original, that sacrifice is almost ruined because
I didn't see the movie.
I don't know if you're interested, but honestly, it's not that good. It really is.
It rules.
I also beg to differ.
Okay, well, I will admit, while I watched it, I was getting feels because the nostalgia, but when you think of it narratively, it's just not as good as the original. Obviously, people will disagree. I'm not saying you're entitled to disagree. You're entitled to think it's the most awesome thing ever. I just don't think so. But yeah, so that was just like going back to Neo, because there are so many stories within popular culture that follow the hero's journey. And I think The Matrix is another great film series that can be viewed through that lens. Which also goes to show that, while people may take issue with the monomyth theory, and when Joseph Campbell was writing it, as I mentioned in the Vox Machina episode, he wasn't considering women in his monomyth theory, but women definitely can fit that. Like, if you go for, like, Rey, she has the hero's journey as well.
Yeah. Leia, as we mentioned, has her own hero's journey. And I would like to point out that when George Lucas was writing Star Wars, he had Joseph Campbell's the hero's journey in mind, because it follows Luke's path follows that verbatim, essentially.
Yeah. So
does any movie in the last 100 years exemplify the hero's journey as much as Hercules? Probably not, right?
Well,
and I'm talking Disney animated Hercules. I'm not talking The Rock or anything else.
I mean, sure. It
does.
Hercules
And great music.
Mulan also follows the hero's journey.
More than Hercules? No. Sorry.
Well, Hercules is divine.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I guess it depends. Well, like, if you
That was more of like a joking question.
Oh.
But,
well, you're still entitled to argue that as long as you can back it up.
Yeah.
like I said, more of a joke. I do think Hercules is a great movie, but...
No, Hercules definitely is, and as the cartoon and as with the myths, with his 12 labors, they both exemplify the hero's journey.
Absolutely.
One is in a more kid-friendly, not necessarily following the myth kind of way. The other one is the myth and everything that he has.
Are you telling me that Disney movies are not historically accurate?
Yes, that is what we're telling you.
Mind blown.
You knew that already. That was a joke.
Loose sarcasm aside, as I was saying, both exemplify the hero's journey. Just one is the more kid-friendly, with obvious reasons. I mean, Disney wasn't gonna. They made Hera his mother. Hera can't stand Hercules. She's the reason why he has to go through those 12 labors anyway.
Yeah.
But if you wanted more examples of, like, women, Rey from the Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen has the hero's journey. Trying to think of some other.
I can't think of
I
anyone.
think, like most characters in Game of Thrones follow either hero's journey or some kind of subversion of it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think,
Well,
I think
Arya's
that's a great example.
Arya's storyline
Yeah.
absolutely follows the hero's journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like Oberyn as a failed hero's journey.
Yes. Yeah, I
Because
would agree.
he gets to the moment of decision, he has like the potion or whatever,
Yeah.
and he just squanders it because he can't get over himself.
Right, right. He's like Han Solo in that he's an arrogant and you know, suave. So
I was trying to remember like who you're referring to. My mind is drawing a blank right now.
He's from Dorne. He fights the mountain.
well, you didn't watch Game of Thrones.
I saw
He
clips.
gets his eyes crushed.
Oh, him. Okay.
That
The
part
guy that
got
got
it.
his skull crushed in.
He got,
That's
just as like a segue, like out of this hero's journey. When you rank the dumbest deaths because they could have been avoided, he is like at the top of the list.
Well, that's because he chose to dance and flourish
Like,
the use of his spear that he couldn't just
He wanted an
finish it.
admission.
But
He couldn't
got
finish
it.
it.
But it's like,
Yeah.
oh my lord! Like when I was watching that scene, I was showing my sister Alexandria, and I was like, "Is he going to stab him?" I was like, "Wait for it."
Poor Tyrion.
I
I
know.
felt him.
The
I
look
think
on his face after that.
he
Oh,
had
I
such
know.
a good thing because I remember when Oberon is drinking beforehand, and Tyrion is basically saying, "Please don't drink when my life is the one that's on the line. If you royally screw this up," and
Yeah.
he says, "I always drink before a fight." I'm like, and that is your problem. But we'll get away from Game of Thrones. The Caffeinated Librarians will be having an episode on Game of Thrones, so stay tuned for that.
Yes, we will. Yep.
But concluding, yeah. So I don't know if you wanted to mention any last thoughts on the.
Just that it's, I think, Luke's story, Leia's story, and to some extent Han's story either have some variation of the hero's journey
Mhm.
or like Luke follows the hero's
Mhm.
journey in verbatim. I love the Star Wars movies. The prequels are near and dear to my heart because The Revenge of the Sith came out when I was 15, and it was incredible seeing that in the movie theater. But I just think it's a really great story, and I love the stories that are coming out now. It just expands more on a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, and it also gives new generations.
Yeah.
Like I remember, and this is how I'll end it. Like there was this cute scene of this father, and he's watching the scene where Darth Vader reveals that he's Luke's father, and he's looking at his daughter like side eye as she's watching, and the daughter goes,
Yeah.
and then she looks at her father, and
Yeah.
he looks, like it's so cute.
It's so generational that, everyone.
Because new generations are always discovering this film, and I think the fact that these stories are still being told just speaks to the universality of its message. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed this episode.
Not to mention that John Williams is a genius composer.
The musical score is awesome. The
Yes.
scene when Luke in the first film where he looks over the sand dunes, that
and
was
looks
gorgeous.
at the two sons of Tatooine.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Like I even said out loud, that music is gorgeous.
Yeah.
So we hope you liked this episode. Please comment. We love to know what you think of
Yes.
4, 5, and 6. What you think of our
What
discussion
was-
of Luke and the hero's journey.
Yeah, please let us know what your experience was seeing Star Wars in the theater for the first time, whether that be Star Wars at A New Hope or Star Wars The Phantom Menace.
Attack of the Clones, Jar Jar.
Yeah, let us know because we love to hear from you. We love to know your thoughts.
Yeah.
What do you
Talk about a
wish?
hero's journey, Jar Jar Binks.
Luke?
We'll debate that. Jar Jar Binks.
has a really quietly funny storyline now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just let us know. We love to hear from you. Let us know what you wish we would have spoken about that you think, we should have, but we just didn't. We apologize if we missed anything that you really wanted us to discuss. But thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
See you next time.
Bye, everyone.